Now for a really big and gut-wrenching question. Who or what causes evil to exist, to happen? Or even better, who or what is the creator of evil? Let's look at Isaiah 45. Verse 7 says this: "The one forming light and creating darkness, causing well-being and creating calamity, I am the Lord who does all these things." I mean, that sounds okay to most of us. I don't think it really bothers us much that the Lord who created light and darkness can cause well-being and create calamity. As much as we might wish Scripture didn't say that God creates calamity, something that might affect us, we accept it fairly readily. Oh, if it were that simple. The verse we just read is from the New American Standard. It employs a translational method that's called dynamic translation. I want you to look now at that same verse in a more literal, direct, word-for-word translation from the JPS, Jewish Publication Society version. It says, "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and I create evil. I am the Lord who doeth all these things." Now that does hurt our sensibilities. It says bluntly, the Lord creates evil. Is that possible? Even the King James Version says this basically the same. "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things." See, there are four key Hebrew words in this verse: or, choshek, shalom, and ra. So by mixing in the Hebrew with the English words, the verse would read, "I form the or and create choshech. I make shalom and I create ra." Now, we've studied the words or and choshech, so we know that they are words denoting two opposite categories of the spiritual nature, good and evil. Shalom is a very interesting Hebrew word that we could take up a whole session talking about. But for today, just know that its very nature is describing a sense of well-being, of peace, of good, of godliness, of prosperity, of grace. But the key is it comes from the hand of God. It's divine. Therefore, it's a spiritual source. That's what produces shalom. The Hebrew word ra has a similar but opposite sense. Ra means evil or bad. Now remember the principle of opposites we've talked about. The principle that in our universe, everything that exists has an opposite. So as this verse and many others tell us, if God forms light, then darkness is present too. If the Lord creates shalom, then evil also erupts. God's behind it all, controls it all, uses it all for his divine purposes. It's only in our more modern Bible translations that we find the word for evil, ra, replaced with words like disaster and calamity. The Hebrew word ra means evil. Now, calamity and disaster and woe can sure result from evil. And so those terms can be used in a dynamic way to explain a resulting action, but ra directly refers to the spiritual sense of evil. That's because ra is the opposite of shalom. Now, don't think this is some isolated verse concerning evil that I read to you out of Isaiah. This phrase, directly showing the Lord causing evil to exist and to happen, is scattered throughout the Old Testament. Amos 3:6. Yep, I was right the first time. Amos 3:6. "Shall the horn be blown in the city and the people not tremble? Shall evil befall the city and the Lord hasn't done it?" Lamentations 3:38. "Out of the mouth of the Most High proceedeth evil and good." So why does evil exist in our universe? Because God designed our universe as a universe of opposites. Thus, when God created good, evil came into existence as good's natural opposite. Here comes a key concept now in our lesson today. God did not create evil in the sense of God manufacturing it. God didn't turn to his right and create a big mound of good. Then he turned back to his left and created a big mound of evil. Evil was the result of his creating good and of placing that spirit of good into our four-dimensional universe, a universe of where everything must have an opposite. And one easier way to think about this is that when we can envision that evil is everything that God does not command or instruct. Evil is the opposite of what is called good by God. Now, I want to draw you an admittedly imperfect, but I think fairly reasonable analogy for you. It's like when we go into a room. Follow me here. We go into a room and we flip on a light. We flip a switch. Electricity flows through a filament in the light bulb. It glows, and presto, we add light to a room. But when we turn the switch the other direction to off, and the room goes dark, did we add darkness to that room? Did we put darkness into that room? Did the current in the light bulb reverse? Now it sucked all the light out of the room. Or was the darkness manufactured in some physical process, similar to when the light was manufactured? No, because darkness is simply the opposite of light. If light is not produced and present, then the condition remains darkness, which is the natural state. Darkness is not something that is made, per se. Darkness is just the absence of light. In the same way, evil is but the absence of good. So let's briefly sum this up before we head to a conclusion. We live in a universe that consists of four dimensions: length, width, height, and time. But we know with that there are probably more dimensions than those four. However, those other dimensions don't seem to be a part of the fabric of our universe. Therefore, there are other universes that employ those other dimensions as their attributes. Spirit can be thought of as a dimension, but not of our universe, a fifth dimension. But nevertheless, it exists in living beings. We can't see it. We can't directly observe it because it's something from outside of those four dimensions. The Bible tells us that spirit was brought from somewhere else and put into us by God. The principle of opposites is a key foundational law of how our universe operates. The principle says that everything has an opposite. Due to the principle of opposites, evil exists because good exists. Evil was not created by Jehovah in the sense of it being manufactured. Evil's the result of God defining and creating good. Evil is a reaction to good. All that is not defined by God as good is evil.